Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
What is up, girls? Welcome back to another episode of the Women's Fitness Academy's podcast. I'm your host, Siggy, one of the WFA's educators and a women's online coach. Today, I am joined by the lovely Soph Allen. For those who may not know Soph, she is the founder of Train with Soph, and you may know her now from her execution of glute training and great fucking reels on TikTok these days. Can I just give you credit right now? Your TikToks are booming. I don't know if it's because I follow you, but like every time you pop up, I'm like, I just want to sit down and like listen to what you have to say about calorie deficit.
Thanks, girl. I think it's because I'm doing a fat loss series, and you know how people just love to hear about anything fat loss related. And I think TikTok's such a young demographic, but also like, you know, when Instagram started and people just didn't know anything about anything, whereas there's been a huge movement towards education around training and nutrition, so people understand calorie deficits, how to enter a fat loss phase and stuff. But I feel like TikTok is that younger audience that don't know these things, so you can really educate. Like there's a lot of room for education around those basic things that I feel like have been taught to death on Instagram. And that fat loss series just took off. Like, yeah, the videos did really well. It was a really good series to help boost my following because it went through a bit of a lull, and then that's really helped pick it up. But I've been a bit slack. But thanks, appreciate the props.
I really like how we started the topic around like the TikTok side of things and Instagram, because many of our listeners are into fitness and health, and some of them are coaches as well. And I would love your perspective around like, what did you find that lull in Instagram or in TikTok, and how have you shifted your content more towards the educational side of things on TikTok? Because too often I'm seeing people just fucking dancing.
Okay, what's going on with your algorithm? Because I know that people think TikTok is just 13-year-olds dancing, and it's like, okay, if you're engaging with that content, that's what you're going to see. And there is a lot of that, and it was like that when it first came out. But as any platform matures, it's going to go through its own changes, and it's really what the users make of it. And I think because it's such a powerful platform, people already know, like when Instagram started, influencers weren't a thing. So people are going into it with this mentality of like, I want to become a creator. I want to be an influencer. I'm going to be really strategic about how I grow my following. But back to your question about like a lull in growth or engagement or whatever it might be, whatever metric is concerning you, it's so normal. Like no matter who you are on these social media platforms, no matter how many followers you have, I think it's really common for your account to just go through a phase of like I'm pretty sure I've just lost like 3,000 followers over the last like 2 months. And you know why it is? Because I was posting content about my breakup, which I know we're going to chat about today. And it attracted a lot, like those videos went viral, attracted a lot of people. And this is the thing about going viral. The video you've gone viral for, people will follow you because they want to see more of that content. But like I went through a breakup, and you know, there's only so much time I can be like talking about breakup content, like I'm over it. So I don't really want to dwell on it. So people are sort of wanting to see more of that content, and that's why they followed me. And then they're going to unfollow me when I'm not posting about it because they don't really care about fitness. So like a percentage of people might stay for fitness, but that's what my main thing is about on Instagram. So yeah, it's really common to go through lulls. You just need to stay with it, like stay consistent. It's a really good time to test different types of content as well, because you're like, what have I got to lose? Like if the numbers are going down, what have I actually got to lose? More, like whatever the opposite of growth is, decline. So it's like test other things. Like if you're a fitness creator, maybe you start talking about food, maybe you start talking about beauty. Like I know for me, people are asking questions about like skincare or like hair or like other things. And I've been really, I don't want to post about things that aren't fitness because that's my niche. But I think niche on TikTok is good, whereas broader is good on Instagram. That's just my personal opinion.
You mentioned such a good point around like the viral videos side of things, because too often people are wanting to make that big hit into a viral video, but then it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to convert towards leads or sales. And it's so true regarding us putting out videos there. Like, as you mentioned, like when you were going through that breakup, of course you were going to attract a lot of people who resonated with this, but now we've gone past that, where now we're going back more to the training, the lifestyle side of things. So it's not as specific to the breakup. It's more specific back to your niche, to what you were doing previously.
True. And I think it's just good to show that you're human in other aspects of your life that aren't just this one fitness thing, because it makes you more relatable. And now that I'm in a new relationship and have been speaking about it a bit on social media, because people saw that breakup, they're like such hype girls for me. Like, it's actually so nice to see people message and be like, it's so nice to see you're happy and you've like found love after that breakup. And so that's a really nice part of the story, to show that side of things. I just haven't been posting much content relating to like coming through the breakup and then it all being worth it, when like, because you find yourself and you become this better version of yourself, and then whether you meet someone or not doesn't mean it's a success. But when you do and you're like, oh, okay, I'm so glad I didn't stay in that relationship that I was settling in, because I realized there's so much more out there for me. I feel like I could definitely be posting a little bit more about that, and that would sort of target the people that have gone through breakups. But I also don't want to be like making anyone feel bad, because I know when I was going through the breakup, I was like, I don't want to see happy couples. Stop rubbing it in my face, you dogs.
Let's talk about the breakup side of things. Obviously, we're not going to go into the nitty-gritty private side of things, but during breakups, those, like, I know I can relate to this, and you've spoken openly about this during that time where you just found it really, as you mentioned, like on Instagram, watching other people being happy and, in soulful relationships. Like, what was the hardest part for you during that first, 3-6 months of the heartbreak, of the breakup?
Well, I think the initial phase is pretty rough, because there's no making sense of what's going on. And I think as humans, we're really wired to try and make sense of whatever's happening around us, and not everything makes sense. And we can't like neatly put things into little boxes and be like, that's why this happened. And the relationship broke down because of this one reason. And they're really complex things. And you can't actually, I mean, some people still do, but I chose not to be in contact with my ex. You don't really resolve the trauma or process what happened in the breakup with the other person, because like you're having your own experiences, but there are so many questions you have for them, and you might even go through the like, I want to fix them, if I can just fix them then maybe we can work. But yeah, I think that initial phase is the hardest, where it's so painful and you just want the pain to stop, and you're like, I don't know what to do. Like, my house was a dump. Like, it was so messy and dirty. I just didn't even have the energy to clean it. I was just so sad. And then I think it does slowly get better, but it's not a linear thing where it's like every day it's better. It's like one day you might have moments of being okay, and then the next day you might be in bed crying, and then the next day you might have more moments of being okay. And it's really taking it hour by hour, moment by moment. It was a really like transformative thing, which I think breakups, out of a lot of the adversity we face in life, breakups are one of the most transformative as far as our own personal growth journey, because you're forced to look at yourself and deal with it. And you need to kind of pull yourself out of that hole, unless you're an avoidant person and you just don't deal with it. So it was really transformative. And now in hindsight, I can look back and be like, that was the best thing that happened to me, which you always hear people saying in the midst of a breakup, and you're like, I don't think it is. And then you get there and it is. But yeah, the hardest was just the start, just how painful it is. And then going through there are so many different parts of the breakup that are hard. I was fortunate that my ex isn't on social media or anything like that. I think that would have been really challenging. Having any insight into their life, I think, can be really difficult. And it's just processing some uncomfortable feelings that come up that makes it hard. Seeing other couples can be triggering, but the worst of it is just the own hell that you create for yourself with all the what ifs. I think the stories you tell, what it could have been if we just fixed X, Y, Z, or if they were just a little bit different, or I can't imagine my life without them. And then, you eventually get through that and get through the loneliness, and loneliness comes and goes, but you get through the worst of it. And I mean, look at me now.
Look at you now. You're fucking glowing.
Thanks, Queen.
And you mentioned a really good point around the topic of you having those down moments, and it wasn't necessarily a linear progression. You know, you had your up day and a down day. You also mentioned just previously how it was also one of the best things for you. And like you said, too often we don't look at that experience as something that has given us more growth and positivity, because too often we're like, oh my God, we miss them. I want the companionship and so forth. What do you think was the biggest lesson out of that breakup?
This is really interesting because I haven't necessarily reflected on it overall since it happened. Like, I did so much during it, like throughout it. I did heaps of processing, heaps of journaling, therapy. I read books and books and books on breakups, attachment styles, like everything. I think I know you and I are really similar in that we're very proactive, and that's how we process. And not everyone has to go through that way, but I really try to understand something and pull it apart and get into it. And I was hard on myself because I was like, you're not doing as much as you could to be getting as much growth out of this situation. Like, that was my mindset. And I'm like, just chill, like, let it be what it is. So I haven't fully reflected and been like, what was the biggest lesson? But I think just some of the usual things that came out of it were like, it sounds so cliche, but like trusting your gut, because my gut definitely told me to leave that relationship earlier. And I remember seeing content on TikTok and seeing people talking about that, being like, I didn't want to leave, but I did. And it was the best thing ever. And I was just in something that, because I was lonely and I was scared to be alone and that there wouldn't be something out there for me. And I'd be like, swipe, swipe. I can't look at that. It's so triggering because I feel like that's me. And I don't want to confront those thoughts. But I think just having that, I guess the biggest lesson was knowing that I am going to be okay alone. And I always knew that deep down, but if I really believed that, I would have left that relationship earlier because it just wasn't right for either of us. Like, nothing catastrophic happened. We just weren't compatible. And I think I've really learnt that now, because even during dating, it wasn't like I started dating really quick after my breakup. And there was one point when I was dating this guy and I was just like, I'm scared that I'm just doing this to like cover up the emotions. And I was like, I'm going to stop this just to like sit with myself for a bit. And it was one of the proudest moments, because all of me would have been like, oh no, this is fine. Like, I have attention, I've got connection, and it'll do. It's almost like settling. And then I was just like, you know what? I just want to like chill and do my own thing. And I don't think I've ever really felt that way. And sure, there's still moments of feeling lonely and being like, am I ever going to meet someone? Like, I'm 33. This is scary. And I felt so proud for doing that. And then I was really happy. And I was like, I'm the source of all this happiness. It's not because I'm seeing someone, talking to someone, getting attention from someone. And so that was a really nice feeling.
There's so much growth from being able to sit with your feelings and understand that you are responsible for your own happiness, and whoever comes along that journey is just a fucking bonus. And honestly, that's something that took me a really long time to figure out myself, because I was constantly the people pleaser, the one who was wanting to be with everyone and do everything. And, you know, through my previous breakups and dating, you just realize yourself falling into these old habits of, oh, I want to see them because, you know, I feel lonely. And I literally, oh my God, I haven't shared this with you yet, sharing it live on a podcast, but I literally just denied a second date with a guy because I didn't feel it. Like, my gut was just like, are you like genuinely interested in this person? Yes or no? No. Then fucking text him, be like, thank you for your time. What is the fucking business called?
Job application. You were unsuccessful at this time.
Oh my God, I did not say that, guys. I just said I really enjoyed getting to know you, but I'm no longer wanting to pursue this. And even that felt so scary to do. I knew it was the right thing, because if I went ahead with that second date knowing that I did not want to do this and I'm doing this whether to please him or the fact that I'm like, oh, let's give it another chance because, you know, you should do it. But it's just like, am I doing it for the right reason?
Totally. It takes a lot of courage and like vulnerability to be honest with someone, especially as a people pleaser, because you're like, I don't want to offend. Like, do I just ghost? But it's like ghosting is so much worse than just being upfront and being like, hey, I just don't really feel the connection. And I think a lot of people are scared to actually have those open, honest conversations. Like, how many friends do we have that are like, oh my God, we just stopped talking. Do I message and find out what happened? And we just accept it. We're just like, okay, they've ghosted me. Like, it's literally become a thing. And we're like, okay, cool. We just don't communicate anymore. Love that.
Yeah, and communication is one of my big values. So I rather communicate that with someone instead of me actually ghosting them. Like ghosting, as you mentioned, like it's such a common thing these days, but it just shows you that type of person they are as well, who's someone who cannot sit with their own thoughts and feelings. So I kind of feel sad for them.
Yeah, it's a bit cowardly, huh?
Definitely. In regards to the breakup, there was a stage where you transitioned not only mentally but physically as well. You went through a quite of a big weight loss journey, and it wasn't necessarily you encountering wanting to be, to lose that weight. Let's talk through that and then run through how you're actually running through your reverse diet as well.
Yeah, sure. So when I get anxious, I really struggle to eat. I lose my appetite. And I am someone who feels very deeply, and romantic relationships have always been like, they take over for me. So when things are going bad in my relationship, it consumes my mind. I find it really challenging to focus on other things. I can't really compartmentalize. I feel like men are really good at compartmentalizing. I'm not very good at compartmentalizing. So that last relationship took up a lot of my mental capacity because I was constantly thinking about arguments, or it just didn't feel right, or I felt disrespected. How would I go about this conversation? I know that having this conversation wasn't going to go the way I wanted to, or there wasn't going to be an openness there. So I was consumed by those thoughts. I literally the other day in the kitchen had this realization that I don't have that in my current relationship. I was like, oh my God, I haven't had to like stress or feel anxious about unknown things or conversations coming up or anything literally once. Like, this relationship just makes my life so, like, gives so much to my life instead of taking it away. So that was really difficult for me. And with that anxiety, I lost my appetite. I really struggled to eat. I just felt sick when I ate. I felt the anxiety made me feel physically ill and just quite nauseous a lot of the time. I was doing a lot of boxing because that was helping me mentally, because that helped me really switch off. That was a bit of a coping mechanism for me. And so those two combined, like boxing twice a week, eating fuck all calories. I don't track. I haven't been tracking. I only track. I use that as a tool when I enter any fat loss phases. So I wasn't tracking. So I have no idea how much I was eating, but I was weighing myself. And yeah, overall, I lost like 5 kilos in a matter of weeks, like a month or something like that. So rapid fat loss. And then I wouldn't say rapid weight regain, but I regained it all, which is healthy because I was at a healthy weight. But I've got, a history of unhealthy thoughts when it comes to food and my body. And that's sort of, I feel like once you have them, they don't ever fully go away, but I'm way better at managing and dealing with them now. So I regained the weight and felt like a failure, even though the weight loss was not intentional, because I get a lot of positive reinforcement on social media when I'm leaner. So everyone's like, look at you, like glowing in this breakup. And I'm like, I'm literally not eating because I'm so anxious and sad. This is not health. But thanks. And then, yeah, regained it. And like, no one made any comments. So that's good. And then, I managed to maintain that weight, my normal weight, for, I don't know what it was, like 8 months or something like that, which I usually recommend to people maintaining the weight for equal to or double the amount of time that you were in the deficit, whether it's intentional or not. And I entered a deficit recently that was for 12 weeks and lost the 5 kilos that I had lost, then regained. And now I'm reverse dieting. And you asked how I'm going through reverse diet. Look, I'm not going to lie. I haven't been super switched on with it, more so because after 12 weeks of weighing everything and tracking, I'm so over it. So I'm still eating my same meal structure. I'm having like my breakfast, lunch, and dinner, a snack, but I'm being way more flexible with like meals out and having more sweet treats and things like that. and I'm weighing myself daily to get a gauge, but I just haven't been as like, I love data. I just have really struggled to track. So I think I said this week and the week before this and the week before this, I'll just track this week to get an idea of where I'm sitting calorie wise, and I haven't done it. So yeah, I'm still weighing things and making sure I'm getting enough protein and stuff, but I've maintained within around 1 kilo of my lowest weigh-in, and it's fluctuating a bit at the moment because my period's on the way, and that always makes things fluctuate. But yeah, that's the story. I'm very excited to not be tracking and weighing food soon, because once I sort of reverse successfully and maintain within 2 kilos of that lowest weigh-in, then I'll be good to just stop tracking.
It's such a positive reinforcement to notice how that rapid weight loss from the breakup affected you. You know, it did affect you negatively. However, you've been able to shift that into more of a positive towards your fat loss phase that you had done over the 12 weeks and monitoring it a little bit different. And correct me if I'm wrong, like, because we've done it for so long, the tracking side of things, we tend to forget how intuitively and mindfully we are able to just pick a certain food or create a certain meal without actually relying on the data.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's been several years now that I've been tracking calories for, so it is fairly inbuilt. And whether that's a healthy thing or not, to look at food and see numbers. I mean, it's not like that all the time. You obviously periods and phases in your life where you are more aware of it in, say, a deficit or a reverse diet, but it does help you make more informed decisions depending on what your goals are. Like, I know for you, you're very focused on building at the moment. So you're like, yeah, give me my carbs, give me my protein, which is so, I love being around you because I love that mindset so much. Like, when you lost all that weight during your breakup, you were like, I want to put the weight back on. Whereas I'm the opposite. I'm like, I want to stay here. And that's just my sort of history of always feeling like I need to be lean to be, you know, worthy, or like a good coach, or to be liked on Instagram, like all those unhealthy thoughts that I'm not shameful to share with people on here, because I know it's really common and it's something that I'm working on and I do work on with a therapist and have done for a very long time and have come a really long way. But, you know, they're still there, they still linger. But I'm heaps better now than what I have previously been.
Those thoughts can continuously linger. Even like for me, sometimes when I like notice myself leaning out a little bit more, sometimes I'll be like, oh, cool. Like, I can see a little bit of abs, but then I'm like, oh no, the gains, I need more. Yeah. I need more food. And funnily enough, ours we're talking about tracking. I haven't tracked my food probably for about, oh my God, I want to say at least 3 years.
Nice.
However, the other day I was thinking to myself, I'm like, am I actually eating enough food? So I put all the data into my fitness pal and I was just like, yeah, I'm on fucking track. This is gold. Like, nice. I knew, like, intuitively I knew I was eating a certain amount that I had to eat during this period of, you know, gaining muscle. And it's too funny how sometimes we won't, I don't want to say trust ourselves, but we'll second guess ourselves going, am I actually on track? Am I doing this correctly? And then you get that reinforcement. You're like, yeah, cool, we're good.
That's why I like to track, because the self-trust is an ongoing struggle, can be an ongoing struggle for me, particularly in a reverse diet, because I've had historically rebounds. So it has degraded that trust a little bit. But I think if you can get to the point where you're like, really just know what you're doing and back yourself, and you're not really overly concerned about the results one way or another, it's like, yeah, that's a really nice place to be and the goal to get towards. And I think the best way to do that is to not track, which feels counterintuitive to people who feel really anxious not tracking. But I think that the best way to build self-trust is to prove to yourself that you're not going to like gain all this weight if you stop tracking. Like, your body will find a point and level out. And so not tracking for me for years before doing this deficit was the best thing for my relationship with food and my body and self-trust.
And also during your dieting phase, we were in Bali. You weren't tracking your food during that time. So what are some things that helped you during your time while traveling and dieting?
Oh my God. The deficit was the easiest thing in Bali. I almost wanted to go back for the end of it because I was like, this was so easy. I was a little bit nervous. I'm not going to lie. It was potentially going to be the last 2 weeks of the deficit, or the last, like would have 2 weeks to go when I got back. We were very fortunate in Bali because it's a really easy place to just be eating healthy, clean, like foods and being aware of the calories and the macros and living a really healthy lifestyle where you're very active still. Like we were all, because we were in one place, we set up a really good routine. I think it's different if you're going to somewhere like Europe or America where their food is maybe a bit more processed and not as, fresh and super easily accessible to get those like really nutrient dense foods. And when you're staying in the one spot, you can set up a routine. So we went to the gym 4 or 5 days a week. We went for beach walks. I mean, most mornings. There were some mornings you guys didn't invite me, but whatever. Not holding on to that resentment or anything, Kate. And yeah, we set up really good routines. And when it's hot, I feel like your appetite just changes. Like there's less desire for those comfort foods to warm you up, like in winter, which we'd left in Australia. So I made just the decisions I made, and I recommend people make when traveling, is get an Airbnb or somewhere you can have a kitchen, so you can have at least one or some meals at home that you can weigh and track yourself. Like you can stock your kitchen with foods from the supermarket pretty easily. I actually brought my oats and protein powder to Bali, which was fine on the plane because people also asked that question. Just put it in your luggage and it was sweet. And no questions asked. I actually didn't eat breakfast once at home. I ate out every meal because it was like a lot of places in Bali have calories and macros, but you just go basic breakfast. So I'd have like gluten-free toast and eggs with avo or like a Nourish bowl. Make sure you're getting protein with every meal where possible. And then when you're eating meals out, try not to go crazy as far as like, I'm getting an entree, I'm getting a main, I'm getting a dessert, and I'm getting a drink, like all things. Like, yeah, you can do that, but try and do that a little bit more sparingly. Try and, eat foods that are like grilled meats with side of veg or a salad or something like that, instead of getting, I don't know, something, for example, like a curry would be super hard to track because you don't know how much coconut milk's gone in that or what else has gone in that, how much oil and that sort of thing. I think you've also got to let go of a lot of the pressure and expectations that we put on ourselves to be perfect and to track perfectly. I didn't even bother using MyFitnessPal and guesstimating. I was just like, I know I'm active during the day. I know that I'm probably in a deficit. I still drank alcohol every like second day pretty much, but I'd have like 1 cocktail or 2 cocktails, except for that one day where we went pretty hard at the beach club. And you were getting us all the tequilas. Anyway, this is a health and fitness podcast. But hey, health and fitness isn't just like being clean and sticking to like, calories and tracking and all that stuff. Like you also have to have a balance where some of the time you're living your life and you're drinking and knowing that that's absolutely fine to do as well. Like you don't have to be scared to do those things because they're fun and they can be part of life if you choose for them to be part of life. So that would definitely be my tips for traveling. And I didn't have scales to weigh myself. And when I got home, I'd lost 2 kilos in 2 weeks. A lot of that was probably also stress because I was on holiday and probably a lot of sweat because it was really hot. So it's not all going to be fat. And it probably wasn't muscle because we were training pretty hard. So I was really happy with how that went. And yeah, they're my tips.
I love that. It just shows you that you are capable of sticking to your goals while traveling, because I have so many conversations with people and clients who worry about going to travel because they are dieting and thinking that they won't be able to get the results or maintain what's going on. It's just like 1 or 2 weeks isn't going to fluctuate that much over a longer period of time. And I love the fact how you mentioned how, if you are wanting a drink or if you are wanting the entree, it's just like being mindful of your choices. Again, like if you're going to splurge out every day, well, yeah, guess what? You probably will gain the weight. But if being smart about it, you'll be able to maintain the change or even lose a little bit more weight.
Yeah, and I think people also get into that mindset of like, oh, I've fucked up now. I'm just going to keep going hard with this. And it's like, don't think that you're so far gone that you can't prevent any sort of like overkill, because there's like going overboard, and then there's just like taking the piss a bit and being like, I'm going to see how far I can push this, even though I know I'm going to regret it when I get home. So it's like try and build in those healthy habits. And that's why whenever I do deficits, I do run them for longer periods of time and go less aggressive and go more inclusive. And that's not an approach that works for everyone. Some people like going hard, aggressive, fast, get it done, and then they're fine. And some people like myself prefer to have more flexibility as far as eating meals out, going traveling, including more foods and sweet things that might be higher in calories in my deficit. I think as well, just one final point on traveling and being in a deficit, you don't have to be in a deficit when you travel. It might actually be easier to be like, I'm going to go back to maintenance for the duration of this trip because it's just too stressful to think about it. Might be a really nice break on the body, help with stress, and then come home and get back into it and like continue on with those routines and habits that you've built during the deficit at home, where it's just easier.
Yeah, it's so much. I find it easy anyway, but to be honest, I can't even speak because I haven't dieted in like a few years. So the thought of actually dieting kind of making me feel sick, to be honest.
It's giving ick.
It's giving massive fucking ick. Speaking of fucking icks, when you started dating again.
Oh, I was like, when I started doing what was an ick for you?
No.
I was about to get roasted.
No.
Yeah, when I started dating.
Yeah, like let's spill the fucking tea here about dating after being in a long-term relationship. Like what I know you mentioned you started dating quite early after the breakup and then you took the break, but once you started back onto the dating scene, what did that look like for you? And like what are some habits or boundaries did you put in place for this?
I started dating about 2 months after the breakup. I kind of gave myself a bit of a rule saying like, wait at least 3 months. And then it was at the point, I got over this breakup really quick, even though there's a lot of content, people like, oh, I saw you had a really tough breakup. I'm like, it wasn't really tough. It was just a breakup, like nothing dramatic. It was just breakups are just hard. But yeah, it took me about 2 to 3 months, maybe 4 months to completely be over it. And that was when I did a bit of solo travel and I was like, just living. It was really good. So 2 months and I was like sort of seeing this guy pretty consistently. Like he was like, really lovely guy, ticked a lot of boxes. He was like into fantasy books, which at the time I was so hard into, and I was like, what? And then I guess it kind of got to the point where we were still just like chatting, but there wasn't like heaps of effort and there was a bit of like awkwardness and miscommunication about like catching up. And I was like, I want someone that's literally going to like dying to see me. Like that is one of the things. I was super clear on what I wanted. Like I journaled a lot, like manifesting, and not that I'm a huge believer in manifesting, more just getting really clear on what I wanted. And that helped me with the boundaries and like identifying the person when the person came along and being like, oh, wow, these are all these things that I said I wanted. You mightn't necessarily get all of them, but if you get super close, you get to choose what your negotiables and non-negotiables are. And I think dating is a really fantastic way to figure that out. As far as boundaries, I didn't really have to enforce too many. One rule I guess I have is just like, if it's someone on a dating app, I don't tell them about my Instagram because I just feel weird about that. I feel like people are going to get like preconceived ideas of who I am and then treat me differently. And also like trauma, because past relationships, people have not liked my Instagram account. And I'm like, fall in love with me first and then you have to stay. It's getting unhealthy. So I don't know, what are some of your boundaries?
What are some of my boundaries in regards specifically to like dating?
Yeah, I mean dating or like dating someone consistent, like seeing someone. It's kind of hard with dating because you're like, I mean, a boundary is if you're annoying and you're not like getting the point that I'm not going to see you. You know what I mean?
I'd say, I don't know if it's necessarily a boundary, but more of a non-negotiable is clear communication and being honest. I'd rather be clear with someone or them be clear with me in regards to their intentions, because too often you'll come across someone and they'll be like, yeah, I want a long-term relationship. And I'll be like, cool, but what does that look like for you? And sometimes like a long-term relationship for me will look completely different to what it will look to the other person. So it's just like, again, that non-negotiable becomes a boundary because you set that boundary going, does that align with my long-term goal vision? If it does, cool, awesome, pursue it. But if it doesn't, like, do you stop it? Do you not stop it? Do you lean into it? The best one for me is seeing people on the apps going, I'm trying to figure out my dating goals. What the fuck do you mean you need to figure out your dating goals?
I feel like I had that.
No, you did not.
You know why? Because it was like so early days post breakup, and I was like, I don't know if I want a long term relationship. I don't know if I'm a short term kind of gal either. So I'm like, actually don't even know. Can I be like a fling girl? Can I be a one night stand girl? Like I genuinely didn't know. But if you're looking for a long term relationship, obviously you're not going to go for people who are like trying to figure out their goals because you're like, it's giving non-committed. But I was definitely in a non-committed headspace when I chose that. Sorry, I'm an ick for you.
I was literally about to say that's an ick. That is my ick for you right now.
Okay,
but I think we've passed that stage.
Yeah, we have. I mean, but I think like what you're talking about is intentional dating. And I think it's really good to get an awareness or an understanding around what things mean to other people, because there are so many, many, many words in the English language or in language in general, and they mean different things to different people. So like a relationship to one person means monogamy, to another person doesn't. So you need to have an understanding of what you want and how you define these terms, and be willing to have those conversations from the start, which can scare a lot of people away, but that's a good thing too, because you're like, I want someone who can handle this conversation and this level of communication, which I know, Sig, that's very much you. Like you're very upfront about what you want and you won't put up with bullshit. And almost to your detriment, I reckon, we've had to have conversations where it's like, give the person a go. And so I'm proud of you for like waiting to the second date until you're like, no, I gave you a go on date one, the vibes are off, and then you make the call. Like I think, yeah, we do need to give people at least, one chance, and then the gut says no, the gut says no.
Yeah. And it's so interesting now these days that relationship, as you mentioned, like the definition of it is different to everyone. And I've had several conversations with people how I want to be in a relationship where it's just monogamy, but I've come across a lot of people who look at a relationship as non-monogamy. So I'm just like, what's the deal here? Like how, I don't know, like obviously, each to their own, but it's just interesting how things have kind of changed a little bit now.
The traditional male-female monogamous relationship model is really being challenged. And I think that's just a result of people sharing their lives more, showing what other things, ideas, concepts, ways of coexisting are out there, and building that curiosity. And people are starting to challenge their thoughts more and how they, choose to relate. I'm the same. I'm like a traditional monogamist straight gal. And that's what makes me feel, most loved. And it's not necessarily me saying I get everything from this one partner in my life. Like I get connection from my friendships and like other things, go to my sister for certain things. I'll come to my friends for certain things. I'll go to my partner for most things. But yeah, it is interesting that those traditional models are being more challenged, and we're coming across that more. I think younger generations for sure are going to be having a lot of different looking relationships to the typical ones we've seen growing up.
Mm-hmm. So true. It's kind of cool to have like different views because it challenges your thought process, and you go, oh, cool. Well, I've been thinking like this whole time because that's how I got brought up. But now someone's bringing a new perspective and you're like, oh, actually, do I want this or do I not want that? So yeah, it's really cool to have that perspective and a little bit of a mind challenge.
And that's the thing, because I remember having this conversation with an ex being like, could you be in an open relationship? And I was like, fuck no. And I was like, whoa, that was like a really visceral reaction. Like, what is that actually about? Like, why is it an insecurity? Am I a jealous person? Like, what does this actually mean? And it's like, it doesn't mean you have to do it to prove anything about yourself. But I was like, well, yeah, no, I am a jealous person. I like my relationships to be just fine, and that makes me feel secure. But also, you know, depends on the relationship you're in, because I was quite insecure in that relationship because I didn't feel loved. Whereas in this relationship, like, there's no question in my mind about how loved I am. Still doesn't mean that I want to explore open relationships. I'm very happy, but I mean, it doesn't mean that you're not happy if you want to explore open relationships either. It just, you know, different appetites, different things work for different couples. Like, I've got friends that are in open relationships. They've got an agreement that works for them. But I think if you went about it, you would need to have really clear boundaries and clear communication about it, what you want to know, what you don't want to know, honesty, and like the foundations of your kind of main relationship would need to be fairly solid, in my opinion. Someone who has never been in an open relationship and doesn't plan on. But I have listened to a lot of Esther Perel.
First of all, shout out to Big D. We love you.
Yeah.
Hey, we need to keep him anonymous for.
I know, we haven't hard launched yet, so
that's
yes,
all right.
My boyfriends.
My final question for you is, since you experienced some form of stressful relationship to now being in a healthier relationship, what are some of your realizations with that transition, and what are your set stone non-negotiables right now to keep that healthy foundation?
Well, obviously, like, communication is like a huge one, and I think communication is such a broad term. Again, people have their own definitions, and it's not just one thing. Like, how you communicate, you know, the good things, the bad things, whatever, but how you repair after conflict. Because I think people, maybe not many people think this, but before, a lot of people thought a good relationship was one that didn't have conflict and didn't have fights. And it's like, it's actually quite healthy to have differing opinions, but how you go about those conversations. And if you come to a point where you've had an argument or not seen eye to eye or done something that you feel you could have, you know, been better at, how you come back to one another and repair after that in a respectful way as a team versus the problem, rather than like you trying to get your point across and like win an argument. I just feel like in my previous relationship, I had the tools to do it, but not the compatibility in conflict resolution styles. So he was avoidant and I'm anxious, and they're like the worst combo when it comes to attachment styles. And so it would be like, he needs space, and I'd be like, I need to repair this right now. And so you're like, who like gets their who gets their way? So yeah, communication and being able to sort of talk about everything and avoid resentment and repair any conflict. Though we haven't had any fights, but we've had like little kind of things where we've had discussions and conversations and stuff. What was the question again?
Your non-negotiables around like having a healthy foundation in a relationship.
Yeah. So compatibility is a huge one, because that was one of the main reasons the last relationship didn't work. So my current relationship has huge compatibility as far as how we communicate and how much time we want to spend together and how we spend that time, like really similar interests and lifestyles and stuff like that. So that compatibility, for me, in my opinion, is really important, because I'm someone that likes to spend a lot of time with their partner, whereas for other people, it mightn't be as important. So what I'm saying isn't gospel and isn't going to be applicable to everyone, but it is a need for me and for my partner. And so that's really good compatibility. And just like respect. I think that was something I had from the get-go, where even in the early days of conversation, when I didn't even know that he was like interested in me, he'd be like, oh, sorry, I can't message you for a couple of hours because I'm doing XYZ. And I was like, huh? He's communicating that he's like setting expectations for when I'll hear from him, and then he follows through. That kind of respect. And yeah, honestly, I'm one of those like cringe people now that is obsessed with their boyfriend, that could just speak so highly of him and all the amazing things. And I honestly just didn't think this existed. And that's, again, really cliche. You hear all those stories about people going through breakups or like being with someone being like, don't settle. And I used to see that and be like, oh, that's such a wank, because like we're always going to have to settle on something. And it's like, yeah, sure, you probably will have to settle on some things because we all have these grandiose ideas of the fairy tale romance out there. And people on Instagram don't really tell the truth about their relationships or like anything. They're not really going to air their dirty laundry out, and you can't because there's another person involved. So you have to consider them. But for sure, don't settle because like I did know what your non-negotiables are. And I don't know if this kind of relationship exists for everybody. So this is like hard dose of truth because like, I don't know, I didn't write the rules. But I'm really fortunate to have found something that ticks like all of my boxes and a really incredible person. And I'm so glad that I went through that breakup to get here, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. So they would be, yeah, the main things.
Mm-hmm. It's so refreshing to see how like from where you were to where you're at right now, and really being able to hold yourself 100% solely and being grounded in your decision as well, knowing this relationship is actually serving me. And like you said, like there's always an aspect that we settle for something, but if that settling is a big non-negotiable, it's just like questioning yourself whether do I go ahead and pursue this or not. By the sounds of things, as you said, like Big D is ticking all the fucking boxes.
Big D is giving really not the nickname we're going for here. Like it's not what everyone thinks it is. I know you can't say what
name, so
I know. Oh, it's so funny. I'm dead for that. The other thing is actually being with someone who actually you can be yourself around. And I know that again sounds cliche. And I would always be like, I was myself around my ex, but it's like, actually, I changed what I was wearing because there would be comments. I held back from showing. I've got like a really weird side to me and like personality, and like I'll say weird things. And you know this about me, Sig, which says a lot about our friendship, that I can be like that in front of you, because it takes me a bit to get comfortable to like be that little freak. He brings it out in me, and he also has the same qualities. So like we're both weird and like do weird shit. I literally the other day I was like, when did you realize that I was weird? He's like, pretty early on. So like someone that, for me, it's really important that like you can be yourself around and brings out really good things in you. Like I'm definitely just a happier person all around, and it's not like he's making me happy, but his like love and support and respect helps me be better in like other elements and parts of my life. And I like brings out a really playful side of me. And so, and people notice on Instagram, they're like, you're like glowing, you're so happy, like loving this happy look on you. And I'm like, yeah, it's literally just being with someone who like celebrates those parts of you. It's like cool to be reinforced for like who you are by someone whose opinion really matters to you.
100%. And it just gives you also the comfortability and understanding, knowing that you can show up as yourself and you don't have to play and act to become someone that you're not. Because like in relation to a conversation at the start of the podcast regarding TikTok and Instagram, it's like, are you putting a facade on to be likable by other people, or are you actually showing up authentically as yourself? And too often when we do show up as ourselves, people who are the same like as us will come into our lives, and we'll attract more of that.
Yeah, definitely. That whole vibe attracts your tribe thing.
Definitely. Love that. Girls, whoa, what a fucking episode. Seriously. Today was unbelievable. Soph, thanks so much for joining me, babe. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you too.
And girls, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure that you screenshot it, tag us at the Women's Fitness Academy, tag Soph, tag myself, and it's time. Let's stick to our non-negotiables.